Okay, this is part 2. There hasn't been... It's been kind of a lot of cat and mouse again. But it's been interesting. I didn't talk much on the last one. I just was kind of watching everything play out. But let's see what happens now. I will try to talk more, I promise.
The Optimates retreated the following night, abandoning Ategua. Soon after, envoys from both the garrison and townsfolk came to Caesar offering their surrender. Caesar accepted, taking the city on the 19th of February.
Looks like he was about to fight a dude right there. I don't know what that game is, but I hate it, the commercial.
Following this action, both sides began focusing on gaining popular support for their cause. Caesar sent messengers to other towns in the area, like Ursau and Ukubi, telling them of the massacre of the Ateguans. Support for the Pompeians began to waver, some deserting to Caesar, and the Pompeians were forced to take more drastic actions, executing the political leaders of the pro-Caesarian factions in these cities. It was now Caesar's turn to apply pressure. He first moved his camp near Niaces on the river Salsum, beginning to fortify the area. Gnaeus attacked quickly, however, throwing the men working on Caesar's defences into disarray. 2 centurions of the 5th bravely pushed forward, both dying in brutal fighting, but their sacrifice inspired their cohorts to follow and stabilize the line. Nevertheless, Caesar had gotten the worst of the fighting, and he relocated to Soracarea, establishing a fort there that cut Gnaeus and Labienus off from Aspavia, an important town for supplies. Gnaeus gave chase, keeping his men on the high ground, but some clever maneuvering and prediction from Caesar led Gnaeus' men to being caught out of position and taking heavy casualties. Both sides had now had some minor successes, but neither was close to a decisive victory. Gnaeus delaying the campaign had been effective at first, but the loss of Ategua and the skirmish at Soracarea had cost him a lot of support. Caesar, meanwhile, needed to bring the civil war to a conclusive end. The resistance of the sons of Pompey, Labienus and Varus, was undermining his position politically. Both needed a quick victory. The older generals, including Labienus, urged Gnaeus to avoid battle and continue his delaying campaign. But the latter's mind was made up. He broke camp at Soracarea, making for the town of Munda. Caesar followed. On the 17th of March, both drew up for battle. Gnaeus and Labienus had chosen a strong position. The town of Munda was on high ground, and they drew up their army in front of the town on the hill. At the base of the hill was a plain, approximately 5 miles wide, with a stream cutting across the middle of it. Though Caesar says they had 13 legions, this is questioned by other sources, some putting the number lower than 40,000. It is possible that the sources are somewhat muddled, and that Gnaeus' full force was around 70,000, including auxiliaries and allies, of which around 30 to 40,000 were legionaries. Caesar was encamped opposite the Pompeians on the other side of the plain with his army. With him were 8 legions, 3 of whom had fought with him since the Gallic Wars, the 5th, 6th and 10th, and 8,000 horsemen, including some excellent light cavalry brought by Bogard. Caesar gives his own numbers as 40,000, but in reality his army numbered around 50 to 60,000 men.
Why would it be off by that figure? Curious.
Caesar made the first move, marching his army out of camp and onto the plain. Confident that the Pompeians would come down from the hill and fight on the plain, so their cavalry on the flanks would have room to move. The Pompeians held their position. Caesar advanced further to the banks of the stream. Again the Pompeians did not move. Caesar crossed the stream, and still the Pompeians did not move. Gnaeus and Labienus knew the strength of their position and would force Caesar to fight on their terms. Having finally brought his enemy to the field, and not wanting to risk missing a chance for final victory, Caesar moved to the base of the hill, drawing up his force with the 10th in the position of honor on the right, the 6th in the center, and the 3rd and 5th on the left, the rookie legions interspersed between the veterans and behind, and with his cavalry on the flanks. With little room for any elaborate maneuvers, Caesar ordered his infantry to attack the Pompeians head-on. The fighting was brutal, Caesar's men having the benefit of experience, Gnaeus and Labienus' men having the terrain advantage and being driven by the strongest motivator, desperate survival. Neither side was making progress. The generals and staff officers of both armies had started the battle on horseback, Caesar riding through his lines, urging his men on. As the brutal fighting continued, Caesar grabbed a shield from one of his soldiers, saying to the other officers, "This will be the end of my life and your military service," and pushed his way through to the front lines, almost immediately taking a hail of javelins on his shield. His other officers and legates also quickly dismounted.
Son of a bitch has balls of steel, doesn't he? Jeez. Did he want to die? Mention any source similar restaurants suggested a young fun section. Marcus Agrippa? I don't know who that is. Did Caesar want to die in this battle to become like a martyr? Because, I mean, he's had plenty of opportunity to die. Why you would choose this battle, I don't know. I mean, he's probably trying to spur up his men and, you know, charge into the fight. But, damn.
Mounted and joined him, fighting alongside him. Gnaeus, Labienus and Varus had also dismounted and were fighting amongst their own men in the carnage. It was some of the most brutal fighting seen in the Civil War. Despite being reduced
12 hours of uninterrupted pain relief. Aleve.
Go away.
I'm just going to click random stuff and something I'm sure is going to come to me because that's, you know, what I love about this kit.
I can't wait. Can't wait. Do more of it, please. More so I don't care.
Despite being reduced in numbers due to years of campaigning, the 10th Legion, one of Caesar's favorite and most experienced legions, finally managed to turn the tide of battle, pushing the Pompeian left hard. Gnaeus was forced to move a legion from his right to reinforce that wing, and as soon as he did, Caesar's cavalry fell upon the now weakened right flank. The Pompeians started giving ground, being pushed back to the walls of Munda, where they finally broke into a general rout, some making it into the town of Munda, others scattering in all directions. 30,000 Pompeians lay dead on the battlefield, Caesar having lost 1,000. Among the Pompeian dead were Varus and Caesar's one-time friend, ally and right-hand man, Labienus. Their heads were brought to Caesar after the battle, and Caesar ordered their bodies be found, and then had them buried with honours where they had died. According to Appian, Caesar would later say that he had often fought for victory, but that on this occasion he fought for his life.
I always respect when, you know, somebody like him takes the leader of the other side. What the hell are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Takes the leader of the other side and gives them, you know, burial with honor. I always think that's very cool, very respectful. I know Alexander the Great did it when he was tracking down that Persian king, whoever that was. But, you know, they're gone. They died. Whatever hatred you had died with them. Because, you know, it's just a shell. So to show it respect, I think is very cool.
Despite this decisive victory, the campaign was still not over. Gnaeus had escaped the battle and fled to Carteia with what survivors he could gather. Many more were either preparing to defend the town of Munda or retreating to Cordoba. Caesar's men blockaded the men in Munda in a gruesome fashion. The bodies of the dead Pompeians were used to create a palisade, and spears with heads of the dead were put along with it. Meanwhile, messengers reached Sextus in Cordoba with news of his brother's defeat, and after gathering a bodyguard, he slipped out of the city at night. Leaving a detachment under Fabius Maximus to keep the survivors in Munda surrounded, Caesar soon arrived at Cordoba. It had since been reinforced by some who had escaped Munda, but with the help of the pro-Caesarian faction in the city, Caesar quickly stormed and took the city, 22,000 Pompeian soldiers and sympathizers dying in the fighting. In Carteia, the pro-Caesarian faction there detained Gnaeus and sent envoys to Caesar, hoping to atone for previously having sided with the Pompeians. However, the pro-Pompeians rescued Gnaeus, killing the leaders of the Caesarian faction and fighting to take the gates of the city. Gnaeus was injured during the fighting, but was able to escape the town with 20 ships before Caesar could arrive. Didius, in command of the Caesarian fleet, heard of this and sent ships to give chase, stationing men along the coast to watch for Gnaeus making any landing. Having left in such a hurry, Gnaeus did not have time to stock up on water or food, and was forced to make land to try and resupply. Didius's men quickly found him and captured most of his ships, burning the rest. Gnaeus once again managed to escape with what few men he could. He and his companions were continually hounded as they fled, Gnaeus being wounded in the shoulder and leg during one of these skirmishes. Having been on the run for weeks, and now having to be carried on a litter, Gnaeus arrived at Lauro with probably less than 1,000 men. A Lusitanian betrayed him, telling his position to the Caesarians. A force under the command of Lucius Caecilius Lento soon arrived. Badly outnumbered, the Pompeians nonetheless made what defences they could on the high ground, and prepared to make a last stand. Despite Lento's larger numbers, he was initially repulsed, the Pompeians resisting desperately. Eventually, the weight of numbers proved too much, however, and the Pompeians were overrun, Lento's men cutting them down. Gnaeus, who had been carried by some of his men from the battlefield, was finally found. Despite his wounds, he bravely tried to fight back before being cut down. Like his father, he too was beheaded, his head being displayed at Hispalis before Caesar ordered him to be buried with honors. During this time, the men...
Why cut the head off and display it and then bury the body? Is it just to show, like, look, we did this, he was an enemy, blah, 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 and then do it? Or do you think that the soldiers did it, beheaded him on their own accord, and then when Caesar found out what had happened, you know, he wasn't really mad at him, but it was just like, okay, look, let's give him a burial now.
At Munda had continuously made sallies against Fabius Maximus and his men, but were consistently repulsed. Soon after Gnaeus' death, Fabius stormed the town, killing or capturing all 14,000 men there. All that remained of the Pompeian faction was Pompey's son Sextus, who had escaped but was now little more than a pirate. Meanwhile, Caesar had been travelling throughout the province, reminding the citizens what good he had done for the province while Caesar and Praetor there. While he was engaged in these actions, he was joined by one of his nephews, the grandson of his sister Julia. This young man was Gaius Octavius. It was around April of 45 BC. The great Roman civil war was over, and Caesar was on his way back to Rome. Caesar was probably bored without gaming, but you shouldn't be, as the sponsor of this video, Rise of Kingdoms, is a great strategy game that is free to play. with 12 civilizations and hundreds of historical generals and units. The battles were waiting for him in Rome, and we're going to cover them in our next episode. So make sure you...
This is good. I do like that he had them, the leaders, buried. You know, respect. I think it's very cool. I said that earlier. Okay, well, Caesar's last campaign seemed to be... earlier when I said, when he grabbed that shield, when he ran into the battle, and I was like, is he trying to die a martyr? This is the last campaign. This was to end it all, so he just wanted it done. It's kind of one of those, I'll do it myself. So maybe that was the approach. He just wanted to hurry up and win this war because he knew this was the only thing stopping peace for, you know, Roman society. Maybe that's what it was. That sounds more realistic. Just a guy at the end of his time and just wants to just finally end it. But I also question, when you have a guy like this with such a military mind, can he live in a time of peace? Was he made for fighting? There's a Andrew Jackson saying, I was born for a storm. It's something to this effect. I was born for a storm, and peace doesn't settle me, or something like that. Basically, like, you know, I'm here to fight. That's what I do. And fighting for him was, you know, wars, duels, arguments. You know, he was just, that's who he was. So I'm wondering the same thing about Caesar. Is this a guy who can live in peace? Now, if this is his last campaign and he was murdered, then I'm going to say no. But maybe he was, and that's why he got killed. They took advantage of him because maybe they saw something coming down and he was just like, no. I don't know. I'm just speculating now. I'm just guessing because as I say, I don't know much about the guy going into it, but he just doesn't seem like somebody who could deal with peace. Seems like a guy who's always willing to look for the next fight. But maybe he hit the point where he's ready. As the last campaign, he's just ready to be done with it. I mean, how many years has he spent fighting? I mean, it's got to be like dog years, you know? You spend 1 year in battle, it's like 3, 4, 5 years of your life that you've just lost from the stress, the injuries, the whatever. And of course, they didn't live very long back then anyways. I think the average age of death was what, like 3.5 years old? These people were brutal. Okay, I'm going to end this one here. Might do another video. 6:12. So, yeah, I'll probably do something. I don't know. But I'm going to end this one here. Like and subscribe, and have a good day. Have a good night.